Hello Leafs Nation, I'm Rick Scarborough and you're watching Blue and White Weekly, where we bring you weekly updates on the Leafs and the hockey world at large. I just found out that one of our producers wanted to trade me at the deadline to a different YouTube channel, but that's not what's important. What's important is we have a brand new week of Maple Leafs hockey to talk about, so let's get into the news. It's normally at this point in the video where we take a look at this week's news from around the hockey world, but there wasn't a whole lot to talk about other than the trades of the week, and we already did that. Up on the channel now, you can find a breakdown of each and every major trade from around the NHL, courtesy of our Rinkside reporter, Riley Roberts. Speaking of Riley, I'll turn things over to him now to take a closer look at the moves the Leafs did and did not make this past week. Thanks very much, Rick. The Toronto Maple Leafs took a while to get started at the trade deadline, but once they did get going, General Manager Brad Treliving made quite the splash. Starting in the afternoon on Friday, just before 1 o'clock, it broke that the Leafs would be getting their hands on Philadelphia Flyers forward Scott Laughton. The 30-year-old centerman had been linked to the Leafs for some weeks prior to Friday's deadline. It was just a matter of what he may cost. Well, as it turns out, he costs a 2027 first-round pick and Nikita Grabenkin. Leafs fans, you'll remember Grabenkin as the Marlies call-up from earlier in the season who won us all over with his broken English and his forecheck, backcheck, paycheck mentality. I can already see him fitting well in the Philly system, especially since he's already friends with his countryman and future Flyers star, Matvei Michkov. Now, Laughton isn't the only piece coming back to Toronto. With him, the Flyers send a 4th-rounder for this year and a 6th for 2027. Later in the afternoon, just as the deadline was passing, we heard that Brad Treliving had called up his predecessor, Kyle Dubas, to make some sort of deal with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Well, that was to send Connor Dewar and Connor Timmins to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a 5th-round pick this year. At first, you may shake your head at that, asking why Treliving would do such a trade, until you do the math and realize that the Leafs just gained themselves $2.28 million worth of cap space, and that was for this next deal. The Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs, enemies on the ice but evidently business partners off of it, agreed to a deal that we did not hear about until after the 3 p.m. deadline. The Leafs are sending to Boston one of their top prospects, Fraser Minten, as well as a 1st-round pick next year and a 4th-round pick next year. In return, the Bruins send defenseman Brandon Carlo at 15% retained salary. Carlo is 6'5", 220 pounds, and has terrified Leafs fans for years in the playoffs with his size and defensive capabilities. So those are the deals the Leafs did do, but what about what they didn't do? Every trade deadline we hear about deals that fell through at the last minute and never came to fruition. Well, the Leafs did not require Mikko Rantanen. He ended up in a sign-and-trade going from the Carolina Hurricanes to the Dallas Stars, but the Leafs were very, very close to him. Initial reports said that the Leafs and Hurricanes were talking about Rantanen, but that Carolina wanted Matthew Knies as part of the return, and that's where talks fell through. It has since been reported by both Chris Johnston of SDPN and Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet that Carolina inquired about pending UFA Mitch Marner as a return for Mikko Rantanen. Brad Treliving spoke to Marner about this since Marner has a full no-move clause on his contract, and Marner would not waive the clause, halting talks between the two teams. It has also been confirmed that the Leafs at least inquired with the Boston Bruins about captain Brad Marchand before he was traded to the Florida Panthers. We don't exactly know how far talks went, but as for... there it is. Howdy there, folks. Byron Doyle here, Blue and White Weekly, and I got something to say. They've been keeping me off these airways for far too long. The people want Byron, and Byron you're going to get. Now, I got a little bone to pick with this NHL Trade Deadline. What are the two things the Leafs hate more than anything? The two teams the Leafs hate more than anything. That'd be the Boston Bruins and Florida Panthers. They were both busy at this deadline. They were busy together. Bruins captain Brad Marchand is a Florida Panther. I don't like to see it. I do not like to see it, boys and girls. And the reason I don't like to see it is, well, Marchand's a rat. Marchand is the kind of guy that you hate to play against him, but you love him if he was on your team. And forever, Leafs fans have been saying, nope, I'd hate him even if he was a Leaf. Well, he was on Team Canada at that Four Nations tournament there, and you loved him, didn't you? I'm willing to admit I did. I loved having Brad Marchand on my team, but he's not on my team anymore. The Four Nations face-off is over. Who knows if he's going to the Olympics? But Canada's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Toronto Maple Leafs, Boston Bruins, Florida Panthers. The Boston Bruins just sent that rat to join a whole bunch of other rats. Think about Florida Panthers players. Who do you not like on that team? Loudmouth Matthew Tkachuk, a bald-headed Sam Bennett, a whole bunch of guys you don't like over there because they're mean, they're nasty, they'll do whatever it takes to win. They're just like Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand, in another universe, was born to be a Florida Panther. He was born to be a Boston Bruin. We all thought he would be for the rest of his career, but he's a Florida Panther now. He's going to make the playoffs with them, and that makes it a nightmare to be the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's now imperative that you win the Atlantic Division. The Tampa Bay Lightning are just a good team. That's a fact. Florida Panthers, do you want to go up against the line of Bennett, Tkachuk, and Marchand in the first round? I don't. I wouldn't make it to the second round with all my body parts in one piece. You gotta win the first round. You gotta win first in the Atlantic Division. Guarantee yourself a wild card. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy matchup, but it means you're not playing the Florida Panthers. Rest up, beat the wild card, and you can get ready to face Marchie and the Panthers in the second round. That's all I got to say today, folks. Go Leafs, go. Ricky, send it back to you, pal. He cut our feed? A man that cannot tie his own shoes, cannot remember my name, and sometimes cannot even remember his own name, cut the feed, hijacked our broadcast, and went on a rant about Brad Marchand. You never cease to find ways to surprise me, Byron. The week kicked off Sunday with a matinee matchup in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. Mere minutes into the game, Max Domi opened up the scoring on his 30th birthday to give the Leafs the lead. Not long after that, Connor Timmins got in on the fun with a wrister from the side of the net, and it looks like the Leafs are about to run away with this one. That is until the Penguins woke up and realized they're at home and there's still a whole game left to play, so they rattle off 3 goals in the remainder of the period, including an assist and a goal from Sidney Crosby, and that would not be the last we'd see of him on the score sheet because, of course it wouldn't, he's Sidney Crosby. The frenetic pace of this one doesn't slow down as the second period opens up with an Austin Matthews goal to tie things at 3. It's there, however, that we take a little pause to catch our breath for all of 10 minutes until Brian Rust and John Tavares make it 4-4. Seeing that his adoptive father, John Tavares, scored, Matthew Nyes decides, "Hey Dad, I'm just like you." He cuts off a Pittsburgh pass at the Toronto blue line with only 3 seconds on the clock and takes off down the ice in a terrifying manner. It is genuinely scary that a man that large can move that quickly. Nyes reaches the high slot and the puck leaves his stick with 0.5 seconds on the clock, firing it away, and the puck crosses the goal line with literally 0.1 seconds left in the period, and the Leafs have the lead going into the third. Now, I know as a fan base, we like to hype up our own players and other teams tell us, oh, he's not all that, but Matthew Nyes, he might be him. The excitement of that was cut short, however, as Rickard Rakell gets his second of the game 10 seconds into the third. And things stayed that way for the rest of regulation as we head into overtime, where Willie Nylander finds the back of the net through traffic, and the Leafs take this one 6-5. I hope you bet the over on this game. The boys had no time to sit and enjoy that victory, however, as they came back to Toronto the next night to defend their perfect Monday night record so far this season against the last-place San Jose Sharks. Neither team found the back of the net in the first period, with both Alexander Georgiev and Anthony Stolarz looking pretty strong throughout this whole game, all things considered. John Tavares activated the score sheet about halfway through the second, however, and we have the game's first goal. And we'd have to wait until the end of the second for the next goal when Matthew Nyes, who is apparently the best player in the world when we're in the final seconds of the second period, scores to give the Leafs a 2-goal lead. The Sharks tie it up, send us to a shootout, and the Leafs have their first Monday loss of the year and their first shootout of the year. All around, this was a very Leafy loss. Let's go to Wednesday. Less than 48 hours to the trade deadline, the Leafs rolled into Vegas to face the Golden Knights and to show GM Brad Treliving all the holes in the lineup that need fixing at the deadline. Apparently, there was a lot of them. The Golden Knights gave the Leafs no room to breathe from the drop of the puck, with Hurdle, Howden, and Eichel all finding the back of the net, And that'll do it for Joseph Woll in this one. He's pulled and Stolarz is in to close out the period down 3-0. Now, I don't necessarily blame Woll for this one. He did not look up to his usual standard, that's for sure. But I blame the players in front of him on this one. Those 3 goals were all the result of poor puck management and defensive breakdowns, and those would continue with Stolarz in goal as Noah Hanifin scores 17 seconds into the second. The Knights would add another to make it 5-0. Matthews and Marner both got on the board, but that's nowhere near enough to call this an attempted comeback, and the Leafs enter the trade deadline with confidence at an all-time low. Friday's deadline came and went as we talked about earlier, and with 2 new additions to the lineup, Scott Laughton and Brandon Carlo, the Leafs storm into Colorado to take on the Avalanche Saturday night. There's been a pattern developing this week with goals being scored in the first or last minute of periods, and that pattern continues here as Valeri Nichushkin scores his 13th of the year but not his last of the night, 56 seconds into the game. Mitch Marner answers back in a hurry to tie it, but here comes Nichushkin again to regain the Avalanche lead. John Tavares would score to tie it once more, and Marner double dips to make it 3-2 Leafs at first intermission. Partway through the second, Tavares gets his second of the night to extend the Leafs lead, but goals from Kiviranta and Drouin knot things up at 4, until a power play opportunity gives Nathan MacKinnon the go-ahead goal for the Avalanche. Couple that with a couple of empty netters, one for MacKinnon for his second of the night, and one for Nichushkin to seal his hat trick, and the Leafs leave Colorado with their tail between their legs, 7-4 the final score. Looking ahead in the week, the Leafs make the journey to Utah for the first time ever on Monday night for their second meeting with the Utah Hockey Club this season. Then it's back home on Thursday to take on the Florida Panthers, and we host the Ottawa Senators on Saturday. And you're going to have to wait until next week to hear all about it so that we can talk about next Monday's St. Pat's Throwback Showdown with the Calgary Flames as soon as it happens. We'll have all those games for you next week, plus so much more. But for now, thank you very much for watching Leafs Nation. Be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, go Leafs, go. We'll see you next week.